I'm Dave McFawn. We're going to talk about equipment today, beekeeping equipment. You need to make a decision when you first get into bees what depth of equipment and how many frames you want the equipment to be. You can have a 10 frame, an 8 frame, or even a 5 frame nuke, like this here on the top here. Nuke stands for nucleus colony. The benefits of a 10 frame is cheaper per space. You get 10 frames in it, and it doesn't swarm as often. It's harder to swarm, but you have to manipulate the outer frame or two to get them to draw it out quite often. The 8 frame works well. They tend to what I call roar more in an 8 frame, and it works real well. 8 frame is lighter than the 10 frame. The 8 frame, the deep comes in about 64 pounds. And the weights of your equipment is important. The 10 frame deep, which is 9 5/8 inch tall, comes in at about 70 to 80 pounds. That's a lot of weight to move. The medium comes in at about 50, and the shallow comes in about 40. The medium is 6 5/8, and the shallow is about 11 and 5 11/16. Now on the 8 frame, you're talking about 60 to 65 pounds for the 8 frame here. That's what this is, deep. The medium is 40, and the shallow is about 32. I'm getting older, so I switched over to 8 frame equipment because I get my hands around the 8 frame equipment easier than I can the 10 frame equipment. So it works real well. It works real well. Now the nuke equipment I use for making splits. When I split a colony, I use a nuke. Yeah, a 5 frame nuke I use for making splits. I'm in South Carolina, so we have problems with small hive beetles, which means if you make a split, which is 4 or 5 frames, from either a 10 frame or an 8 frame equipment, you end up with too much space for the bees to patrol if you don't use the nuke, and you have small hive beetle problems that can overwhelm the hive, the colony. Now I use 2 sheets of Avantech OSB with a sheet of insulation wedge for my top cover. It works real well. It provides really quite a bit of insulation on top in the winter time, so I can get the moisture to condense on the sides of the hive rather than the top of the hive. I also have special made equipment. I have 1 inch thick yellow pine rough cut lumber, dimension rough cut lumber, so it works real well. In addition, you'll need a bottom board. This is a bottom board for a nuke 5 frame nucleus colony. I used to use screen bottom boards. Years ago, I used solid and went to screen when Dr. Hood and Dr. Delaplane did their study on screen bottom boards for varroa control. But it only improves varroa control like 10–15%, and it was statistically insignificant if you go back and read the research. So I went back to solid bottom boards. It works real well, and I've been real happy with it. So that's a nuke bottom board. This is an 8 frame solid bottom board. Now I also use an inner cover. This is a 5 frame nuke inner cover. It's got a porter or a bee escape hole in the center of it, and I feed my bees through that bee escape hole via a pail feeder. And you can look at my video on feeders to determine what type of feeder you want to use. Now this is also I use a moving screen. This is a moving screen.